Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 123, July the 5th, Wednesday, 2017. Alrighty, well we made it through the holiday. Hopefully you guys had a good July 4th. You avoided the rain, had a few burgers, a few dogs, had a day off work, and hopefully you guys had a good time. But now that's all behind us and it's back to the grind. Well, we have one correction to make, and this is actually a good correction, and it doesn't surprise me that we're making this correction because so many mainstream papers were reporting this, and mainstream sites were reporting this in the past few days, and it is that this, as I covered in one of my videos, that Preet Bharara had been named as one of Mueller's investigators, but now it appears that that is not the case, and what appears to be the case is that this man named Goldstein, Andrew Goldstein I believe his name is, who was one of the lawyers that worked for Preet Bharara, has been named to Mueller's team. So I'm not sure really where that story got confused, or whether it was put out there that Preet Bharara was going to be joining Mueller's team, and then it turned out to be a false rumor, or whether he did it and then after doing it saw the backlash he got and backed off from it. So I'm not really sure exactly what did happen there, but as you know, I was absolutely horrified and shocked that Mueller would put Preet Bharara on his team, knowing what a showboat he is, and a guy who loves attention, and a guy who you know would be constantly out there making statements, getting headlines. I mean, it wasn't even a good appointment for Mueller to make. I mean, you don't want a guy like Preet Bharara in this type of an investigation. This type of investigation, these people who will be working, you'll never hear anything really about them. They won't do press conferences. They won't be talking. Mueller will be the only guy, if anybody, doing any type of talking. And you simply would not be able to keep a guy like Preet Bharara quiet. I mean, this guy loves the media. He loves attention. He loves controversy. And so it doesn't surprise me that this is now being debunked, or it's, the story is being modified, however you want to look at it. But it appears now that Preet Bharara is not the guy who Mueller put on his team, but rather an attorney that worked under Preet Bharara, which is still pretty bad, because this man, Mr. Goldstein, apparently, of course, has Clinton ties and various other things. He's also was the lawyer who led the charge on the prosecution of Dinesh D'Souza, if you know who he is, the political activist and filmmaker who was attacked by the government. The office of Preet Bharara with this Mr. Goldstein was the primary attorney that headed up that case, with the full backing of Preet Bharara. So that appears to be what's going on with this appointment by Mueller. It doesn't change a whole lot. I mean, obviously you don't have Preet Bharara there, but you've got a lawyer who worked under him, and you still have these other people on Mueller's posse who were obviously Clinton donors, worked for the Clinton administration, worked for people who knew the Clintons, one of the aides that was accused and then being involved in criminal activity during the email scandal and all that. So it's still a big shit show, for lack of a better term. And what we have with the Robert Mueller posse, it's a freak show circus, my friends. It's a freak show circus. Let's just go through this here for a moment and think about exactly how we got here. Okay, so we get this fake Russia-Trump narrative, which, of course, began with a fake dossier given to James Comey by John McCain, who was trying to bring down the president. At the same time, you have some Democratic donor or donors. Those names we haven't learned yet, but I'm sure that we will. They're donating big amounts of money to Fusion GPS to run this counter intel operation on Donald Trump, using a Trump hater in England, Mr. Christopher Steele, and he is funneling information to the FBI through the field agents in Rome. So we have this entire Trump-Russia collusion is all based on a fallacy, a fake narrative, a false story. But yet, we get this fake narrative. And so what happens next is that then they start going after members of Trump's team, from Michael Flynn, Manafort, Stone, and of course, Attorney General Sessions. And unfortunately, Sessions made a huge mistake by caving in, giving in, and stepping down or recusing himself Now, when Sessions recused himself, that put this into the hands of Rod Rosenstein, Sessions' Assistant Attorney General. And what does Rosenstein do? Well, Rosenstein involves himself in a couple meetings and also signs off on a letter that he sends to President Trump suggesting that they should can James Comey because the FBI has lost confidence in him and his morale. The morale in the FBI is down and various other things. So Rosenstein, now taking over the reins for Jeff Sessions, advises Trump, along with other people in the Department of Justice, that he should fire Comey. So Trump fires Comey. Then after Trump fires Comey, Rosenstein decides that he needs to maybe hire an investigator to look into why Trump may have fired Comey, wondering if maybe it's because, or suggesting it may be because Comey was pursuing a Trump-Russia investigation, and so Trump wanted to get rid of him, despite the fact that it was Mr. Rosenstein himself, in 2 meetings and a letter, suggested to Donald Trump that he fire Comey. So after Trump fires Comey, Rosenstein decides to appoint a special prosecutor, and someone no other than James Comey's one of his best friends, one of his buds, Robert Mueller, who's a lizard of the deep state. And then Mueller proceeds to outline his posse with a bunch of anti-Trump people. At the same time, we have our good friend Mr. McCabe, who's now the essentially the FBI director now, because we're waiting for the new FBI director, Christopher Wray, to be sworn in, which will happen sometime in August. But in the meantime, that puts Mr. McCabe in charge. And Mr. McCabe himself, of course, is under 3 investigations himself. He's the target of 3 investigations. And so now the one of the Senate committees is now investigating Mr. McCabe himself, as well as the 3 other criminal investigations. But their investigation is more to decide whether or not he should step down or recuse himself. It won't matter because here in a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, Christopher Wray will be sworn in, and then we'll see what he does. Remember, Mr. Christopher Wray is an expert in white-collar crime. So he may be looking into the Clinton Foundation and other things and such. He may also reassert himself in these other investigations. So now we have Mueller investigating God knows what, based on a false narrative of a phony dossier and other false information, all promoted, paid for by a Democratic donor working for the Clinton campaign. It's absolutely a freak show circus. And Mueller is at he's the ringleader of it all. Pressure, of course, is being brought on Mueller, and so I do expect as more and more pressure is brought on Mueller, that wanting to maintain his reputation and keep it intact, as well as those people working on his team, what they're most likely going to do is try to find the exit door and get out of this thing while they can with their credibility intact, because the Russian narrative has been blown up. Trump is slowly getting his people in and getting the old Obama people out, and as the tide continues to turn, Mr. Mueller is going to find himself in a very unpopular and very uncomfortable position, and I expect that we're going to see his investigation really go nowhere. If they do find any heads, it'll probably be someone connected to the overall Russia allegedly interfering in our elections, and some low-level, mid-level staffer will probably get something hung on them, and everyone else will walk away scot-free. Mr. Mueller will try to retain some of his reputation and try to get out of there without his ass being on fire. So that's probably where all that is going. It's the Robert Mueller freak show circus. But anyway, that is the correction. That Preet Bharara is not on his team. It is this Andrew Goldstein attorney who worked for Preet Bharara. That's actually the guy that's on the team. Again, that makes sense because putting Preet Bharara on the team did not make any sense at all. That was just crazy. So anyway, we've cleared that up. And that's good news. Now, let's get on to some more humorous news. A picture has recently emerged on Facebook and Twitter. It's being passed all over the place. And it is a photo of Mika Brzezinski's daughter and one of her friends sporting their Make America Great Again hats. big smiles on their faces. Clearly, Mika Brzezinski's daughter is a big-time supporter of Donald Trump. How funny is that? You gotta love it. And of course, the Trump protest, which have pretty much been petering out, fizzling out. Of course, they lack any energy that they had a couple months ago. They're becoming largely irrelevant. No one really cares. They're pretty much routine anyway, and they've had no effect. But what's actually very funny about this most recent attempt at an anti-Trump protest in San Diego, and this is happening more and more, is they were supposed to have a big protest, anti-Trump protest in San Diego. Unfortunately, not that many of the anti-Trump people showed up for the protest because no one really cares that much anymore. They're beginning to accept the realities. But guess who did show up? A whole bunch of Trump supporters. And in fact, they overwhelmed the anti-Trump people and shouted them down with USA chants and drowned out the group there to protest Trump. So it now looks like that the Trump supporters are drowning out and appearing in larger numbers to support Trump than the people who are showing up to oppose him. So the protest, after 4.5, 5 months, finally are coming to an end. They've had no effect, and pretty soon the snowflakes will have to accept the fact that Trump won. He is the president. He's going to be the president. He's not going anywhere. He's not going to be impeached, and none of this other stuff. And so they're having to accept the reality, and soon they'll need to enter a 12-step program for liberals without a clue. Here's some good news for you. Trump has turned around the deficit. In just 4.5 months, Donald Trump has turned around the deficit by almost $1 trillion. Think about that. In just 4.5 months, Donald Trump has reversed the deficit trend by almost $1 trillion. Had we continued on the course that Obama had set for us, we would have incurred by now, since Trump was elected, $918 billion new dollars in deficits. But as a result of Trump's policies, we have reduced the deficit in 4.5 months by $100 billion. So you take $100 billion and $918 billion, you're talking about the upwards of $1 trillion reversal. And this is only after 4.5 months. This process will continue. It's very likely that for the first time since the 1980s that we are actually going to have a president that when he leaves office will have reversed the direction of the deficit and will actually leave office with the national debt lower than when he came in. Obama doubled the national debt. Prior to him, George W. Bush doubled the national debt. Donald Trump has reversed that trend. Absolutely unbelievable. He'll get no credit for that, but just so you know, folks, we're heading in the right direction. Why is CNN freaking out so bad? Why does CNN look like they're absolutely desperate? Why are they pulling their hair out? Why are they spending 23.9 hours a day, every day, trying to destroy Donald Trump? Well, it's very, very simple. It has to do with ratings. We already talked about that. But just as I told you, once the CNN viewers found out that CNN was lying to them and that they were only using their viewers to get ratings, that a lot of those viewers would go away. So while CNN was enjoying all this clickbait that they were engaged in, while they were dropping all these false news stories, while they were prepping all their viewers to expect Trump to be impeached over a Trump-Russia collusion story that was a fraud, while all that was going on and they were ramping all this up, they saw their highest ratings. In May, CNN had 821,000 average viewers throughout the day. That's a measure taken throughout the entire day. How many average viewers did they get? In the month of May, 821,000. Not even a million. We're talking about a major news network. Not even 1 million viewers throughout the course of the whole day. That's how pitiful CNN is. But to them, that was fantastic. Best ratings they've ever had. And keep in mind, MSNBC, their ratings are lower than that. But guess what happened? After the 3 Project Veritas videos came out, and a flash poll was taken through Arbitron, we find that CNN had dropped down to just 656,000 average daily viewers. That is a 20% decline, a 20% drop in 1 month, based on the 3 Project Veritas videos, and CNN basically having to admit that they're only putting this garbage out there that they know is garbage to get ratings. Clearly their viewers are not very happy, and they just went from 821,000 to 656,000. That's a 20% drop in just 30 days. Do you see how fast things can turn downward for a media organization like CNN or MSNBC? This is why they're terrified. This is why they're freaking out. This is why they're attacking Trump with every fiber of their beings. It's because they know the dangerous territory that they're in. They know they're failing. They know they're losing. They're lashing out at anything to try to save themselves. But my friends, when you have a major network where you're paying people like Rachel Maddow millions of dollars a week, and many other people in that network are paying a lot of money, and you cannot even generate 1 million daily viewers, your network is in deep, deep trouble. There are YouTubers sitting there at their kitchen table with a video camera getting more views than CNN and a lot more views than MSNBC. The media war between Donald Trump and the left-wing media, believe me folks, Donald Trump's going to win this in the end. He'll have some tough battles along the way. He'll take some hits. He'll get beat up pretty bad. But at the end of the day, he's going to win this fight. Why? Because he's the President of the United States. He has a much bigger fan base. CNN cannot even gather 821,000. Now they're down to 656,000. MSNBC less than that. Donald Trump has approximately 90 million people who follow him on Facebook and Twitter. So Donald Trump is about 1 million times more popular than they are. He's also the president. He's got the bully pulpit. He's got the big microphone. And of course he'll have results to back him. And this is why CNN and MSNBC doing everything they can to hold on to what they've got, which isn't much. But in the end, Donald Trump is going to win this fight, and he knows it. And now you know it. Guess who's the most popular person in Syria these days? Whenever you go to Syria, apparently, and you talk to people on the street in any of the major provinces there, even the ones that are in a very bad way right now, Aleppo and places like that, places that have been leveled, places that have been through a lot of bad things in the past 7-8 years. The most popular person, the person who gets wild amounts of applause and approval and cheers and brings about a lot of happiness in the country of Syria, Donald Trump. He's very, very popular in Syria because the people in Syria now realize we actually have an American president who actually cares about what happens to them. He's beating the hell out of the terrorists there. He's kicking the crap out of them. And he's not putting downward pressure on the areas of the country that are stable. He's willing to live and let live with Assad, but he's not allowing Assad to run roughshod over people who are opposed to him. They're keeping Assad in a box without actually removing him, while at the same time taking care of the terrorist problem they have. And the people of Syria are finding this to be a very, very good strategy. They love Donald Trump. They love Donald Trump in Syria. Outstanding. I'm sure you'll hear that reported, along with the fact that he's reduced the deficit by nearly $1 trillion. I'm sure you'll hear all about that on MSNBC and CNN. So we were talking earlier about the Russian narrative has been blown up, which means Robert Mueller's team is being blown up at the same time. They will have to come up with something. These type of people never walk away from the table with nothing. So they'll come up with something on some low-level people. It won't amount to very much, probably a hand slap, and Mueller's posse will get out of there with their reputations intact, they hope. But what has actually happened that the media has not been reporting? That we've been talking about here, but we haven't taken a real fresh look at it. What we had a couple months ago was a full-blown assault on Donald Trump, accusing him of being colluding with the Russians and all these other things. But now the entire narrative has been turned. The Russian-Trump narrative is now completely dead. There's still a few people trying to hold on to it, like Robbie Mook. But the fact of the matter is, even many Democrats now admit Trump-Russia is dead. It's over. And so what is happening? Well, the course of events have now begun to change. And now the guns are not turned on Donald Trump anymore. Not to any great degree. Nothing he can't handle. But who is now on the hot seat? Who are the guns pointed at now? Well, Susan Rice. Susan Rice is going to be facing some very difficult questions. She's guilty of crimes. She knows it, and so does the people who will be asking her the questions. And guess what? They have the documents. Remember in the last video, I told you that they had requested documents from the DOJ, the FBI, and the NSA. Documents that would give them the answers to the questions I ask. Well, they have those documents. They already know the answers to all those questions that I ask. They're going to ask those questions knowing good and well that Susan Rice can either lie or tell the truth. They're going to know because they've got the documents. Susan Rice is now on the hot seat. Samantha Power will be right behind her. She's going to have a lot of explaining to do about why she was involved in unmasking, considering she was supposed to be working at the UN as an ambassador. She's not supposed to have anything to do with domestic politics, especially unmasking candidate or candidates or people around them in a presidential election. She's going to have some tough times trying to explain that. So Samantha Power will be on the hot seat as well. John Brennan, he'll be coming back for a couple of visits because he's got some things to explain as well about his role in the unmasking and also his role in promoting the dossier. He tried to play it down in the most recent hearings, but now we have information that shows that Mr. Brennan was clearly involved, very deeply involved, in promoting the fake dossier, and he'll be called back to answer some questions because very, very likely, as we are going to learn from Susan Rice and probably Samantha Power, it was Mr. Brennan, who's the person who they probably went to at the CIA to try to get this done. So the dirty work was done by Brennan's people, and Susan Rice and Samantha Power were the go-betweens, and of course they're going to have a very interesting time trying to explain exactly who gave them the authority to take these actions they took. Will they take it all on themselves? I don't think so, because no one believes that the ambassador of the UN or the National Security Advisor on their own would just take off and start requesting unmasking and all these other things on presidential candidates or people around them. They probably wouldn't have done that without some direction from someone higher up. And the only people really higher up than them could be Barack Obama, or possibly his chief of staff, maybe Ben Rhodes, acting on behalf of the president. And of course you would have to have probably Loretta Lynch, and they'll be having some conversations with her very, very soon. Not just about the fact that she was involved in possibly obstruction of justice, along with James Comey, who will be back to testify. This time he won't be in the witness chair. He'll be a defendant trying to defend himself, participating in the obstruction of justice initiated by Loretta Lynch. So Loretta Lynch has got a lot of issues, a lot of questions to answer. She's in the hot seat. Comey's in the hot seat. Brennan will be in the hot seat. Samantha Power will be in the hot seat. And Susan Rice is probably on the hottest seat of all. She's probably the one who at this point, unless she can come up with one hell of a good spin job or figure out how to scapegoat Comey or someone else, I don't see how she gets and spins her way out of this. We know that she did the unmasking. She's admitted to that. They have the evidence of that. They also have the conversations that she unmasked, which clearly reveal that they had nothing to do with national security, that they were purely things that the Trump campaign was communicating about the things that people talk about when they're running a political campaign. Just general stuff, general nature stuff. This is what Mr. Nunes saw, and this is, of course, now in the hands of the committees. They know exactly what Susan Rice unmasked. She will not have an explanation for it. She better have a good scapegoat. We also have our good friend Mr. McCabe. And Mr. McCabe, of course, is under 3 investigations. He's now in the hot seat. I don't think he'll be around very much longer. I think he will, at the very least, have to recuse himself from his activities during the investigations, and probably will just have to step down as FBI Assistant Director. And there's no question in my mind that when Chris Wray comes in and is sworn in sometime in August, he will probably off Mr. McCabe anyway and put in his own assistant, who is not under 3 investigations. So Mr. McCabe has also got the guns turned on him. He's on the hot seat. Hillary Rodham Clinton, she is, of course, back under investigation with another Senate investigation. This, of course, for her pay-to-play activities that had been going on in Bangladesh. And, of course, this has to do with the story that we covered about 2 weeks ago, where Hillary Clinton apparently used the State Department and the IRS to extort the son of a government official in Bangladesh who was pursuing a man for some criminal activity in the loan business. He was running a shady loan business. The government, of course, went after him. Turns out he was a big Clinton campaign donor and a friend of the Clintons going back many years. And so to get the government off the back of this criminal, Hillary Clinton used the State Department and threats by the IRS to go after the son of the government official who was doing the prosecution. And therefore what we have is a little bit more of government corruption from Hillary Clinton. And so that's being investigated by the Senate. So Hillary Clinton again on the hot seat, again under an investigation again. She's now got the guns turned on her. And of course, once Christopher Wray is sworn in as the new FBI director, being an expert in white-collar crime, we can assume that he will be taking a look at the Clinton Foundation. My guess is he's already very familiar with exactly how that works, and he's believed to be the best white-collar crime prosecutor in the country. And of course, the Clinton Foundation is probably there could probably be no better investigation that matches a person with his skills, and probably no better opportunity for Mr. Wray to demonstrate his credibility and his acumen in this particular area. So I think we can expect to hear more about the Clinton Foundation and more Hillary on the hot seat. And if it can't get much worse than that for the criminals, but it appears now that even Mueller himself is now coming under possible investigation. It appears now that there are several members of a Senate and House committees, both who are wanting to look a little bit deeper at Mr. Mueller and his motivations. Again, there's going to be a lot of pressure put on Mueller, and I think the only thing that he's going to do, I don't think he'll step down because he just probably got too much pride and he doesn't want to be embarrassed. I think what's most likely to happen is that there's going to be a lot of pressure applied to Mueller. He'll probably have to bring a couple people into his posse that are maybe a little more friendly to the Trump side of things, and probably he's going to realize that he's gotten himself into something that as in the last couple weeks since he was appointed, the last couple weeks, the narrative has been destroyed. The narrative was still in place when they appointed him, but now it's been destroyed. So he's probably realized that that part of the investigation is a nothing burger, and so he's probably going to have to focus his attention just on the Russian involvement in the election, which at that point will put most of the emphasis on the previous administration of Obama, because that means that the Russian involvement or trying to involve in our elections was happening, and it was something that was being done to Trump as well as to our election system, if in fact any of it's even true. And so Mr. Mueller is most likely going to have to take this safe track. This way, he doesn't. He has a culprit, and it's not a Republican or a Democrat, the president or Hillary or anyone like that. This way, he avoids taking any really risky, making any really risky maneuvers or taking any really actions that would reflect very badly on him and his team, or stir up a serious controversy or cause a great consternation in the country. He doesn't want to do that. That's not what Mueller would like to see. He doesn't want to stain his reputation. So I think he's going to try to find the safest way to get his tail out of this thing, along with the people that work for him, as they realize that everything is changing so rapidly around them that that the only thing that they can do right now is try to save face themselves. And so I think that they'll take the safe route, which will be to put everything on the Russians, come out and say, yeah, well, we've proven that the Russians are trying to do this and trying to do that. And they might find a couple low-level staffers, which maybe had some information, which they maybe should have gotten to someone and they didn't, or this bureaucracy didn't communicate with this bureaucracy. The president was given enough information, or maybe the president made a political decision. I don't think that they'll really go after Obama, even though that's what a lot of people want, is for Mr. Mueller to focus on Obama because he was the president. He apparently knew this was going on and did nothing about it. In fact, he even told Mr. Medvedev to tell Putin that after the elections that he would be more flexible. We saw that. It's on video. We can all watch it. We've seen it played many times. And so Barack Obama is in a very difficult position. But again, Mr. Mueller is not going to want to get himself that dirtied up taking on Obama because he is a loyal Democrat. He doesn't want that. He probably doesn't want to dig Hillary back up out of the grave and work her over anymore. He realizes that the Trump-Russia narrative is dead. He realizes there's nothing there but a lot of problems. So I think Mr. Mueller is going to take the safe road out that will still help him maintain his reputation, and he's going to get out of Dodge without suffering any major injury in the whole process, because it's a loser. Any position you're on, any side you're on in this mess going on, it's all a loser. Best thing everyone could do is let every bit of this stuff go and move on. The longer you hold on to it, and the more of this stuff you get yourself involved in, whether you're Republicans, Democrats, or an independent prosecutor, there's nothing ahead for you but staying on your reputation. It's the only thing that could possibly come out of it. So this is how I see that going. But it's very interesting that just 6-8 weeks ago, it was all Trump, Russia, all the time. Now the tables have been turned. Trump, Russia is dead. Rice is on the hot seat. Samantha Power is on the hot seat. John Brennan's on the hot seat. Loretta Lynch is on the hot seat. Andrew McCabe's on the hot seat. Hillary Rodham Clinton back on the hot seat. Mr. McCabe and Mr. Comey, they're all back on the hot seat. These people, the tables have been turned on them, and now they are going to have to answer some very difficult questions about their role in the surveillance and the unmasking and all the other activities. I don't expect Mr. Mueller will be looking into this, so it's probably the Congress, if anybody's going to find it. I still believe that it's going to take a whistleblower or a journalist to uncover something, or possibly maybe something we learn from one of the civil suits that are, of course, scheduled on the docket and will be coming up shortly. The cases against BuzzFeed and Christopher Green by the Belarusian man who owned the tech company who's suing BuzzFeed and Christopher Steele, and he's asking a lot of the questions that a lot of us are asking, a lot of questions that Trump's attorney is asking, that Trump is interested in. So, we don't know how this is all going to play out. But right now, there's no question that the tables are turning. CNN's little ratings spike is over. The protests are diminishing. They have no effect. They're now actually being more people shouting down the anti-Trump protesters than actually show up. The tables are turning. The tide's turning. Trump's getting a handle back on this thing. I think that the only thing he needs to do right now, get Christopher Wray, his FBI director, sworn in, let him start taking care of business. I believe Mr. Sessions, nice man, but I believe he needs to go. I believe the quicker we get rid of Mr. Sessions and get a new Attorney General, the better off we'll be. But the tide's turning, my friends. So I think it's all good news today. And we'll just have to keep watching and see what happens tomorrow on TowerGate. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. See you back here tomorrow. You guys take care. Bye.